or within the scientific community. It depends on what kind of peer review we are talking about. Physicians have peer review. I'm on hospital committees. We do peer review of patients' cases. If someone died, there's a peer review. A case, a complication, there's a peer review. So all get together and give their opinions and present data. You can't just give opinion because I don't care what you think. Show me the data. Show me where's the evidence, who did research, who did experiment, who came up with the data, how was it duplicated. A data is not acceptable until it is verified and duplicated over and over and over again. Then it becomes science. That is called the scientific method. So Center came around and said it was peer reviewed by experts from all over the world, and there was a consensus based on other evidence, but that these things are not true. So they had to be taken out. Actually, this is the obligation of the person, the scientist who presenting the data, to take that out based on other evidence which is against those. So he defended that. But you know what? The scientists usually they shut up, and he said that. After that, the media campaign continues. They continue to this day. Now I want to tell you that in 2001, then comes every 2 years IPCC comes with their new assessment. And the assessment in 2001 was the first time IPCC said yes, it is caused by human activities. Now that is important. Why IPCC, when it was formed in something like 1980s, why didn't they just say it right away? Why did they wait for 20 years? Because that is the method of science. You give benefit of the doubt to the opposite view, give benefit of the doubt to the possibility that this may not be true. We do not want to raise false alarms. So IPCC in 1995 said this is a real problem, that this is actually discernible. This is now we know conclusively that this is true. Then it takes them another 6 years before they determine that this is anthropogenic. Now let me ask you, why would they have to wait for 6 years? What were they doing? They were sleeping for 6 years? What were they doing? This is precisely what they were doing. They were looking at data. There is a lot happens between those years, and new opinions come in, opposing data comes in, challenges come in. Look, this is not true. Look at this person's data, and has it been duplicated? It's been duplicated twice. Consider that. Okay, if someone comes with the opposing data, and there's someone else in the party who can say in peer review, this data is opposing data, but when it was retested or we tried to verify it, it turned out to be false. And we verified one more time, it turned out to be false again. So now we are more convinced that this fact is false. It needs to be thrown out. See, that's what's going on for those 6 years. It doesn't happen overnight. This is how science is practiced. In 2004, Discover magazine made a statement finally. Now the media is saying, this is the year, they call it the year the global warming got respect. That there are enough Americans now finally accept it as a fact. So the question is, why are we still arguing? I want to tell you a little bit about Frederick Seitz, one of the top 3 people in Marshall Institute. His last paying job was with R.J. Reynolds. The tobacco company. So some of these people, part of the Marshall Institute was also employed by tobacco companies. And Singer also took money from tobacco companies, and he testified before the Congress that tobacco does not cause lung cancer. And I want to tell you something, a very interesting story. In 1990, this is really interesting. In 1995, Dr. Singer, who is a very reputable scientist, don't underestimate him, he testified to Congress that hydrocarbons do not affect ozone layer. Just a few weeks later, Dr. Rowland, Amalina, and Krutza, they got a Nobel Prize in Chemistry for establishing the link between hydrocarbons and ozone layer. So these people studying for years, a phenomenon, and they are given Nobel Prize. 3 weeks after, Dr. Singh makes a statement that there is no link. So these people are constantly feeding the government, the media, the ideas which are not true. This also shows you what money can do. I mean, the final proof, so to speak, there's no better or bigger proof than someone getting a Nobel Prize, because it gets scrutinized over years before someone gets nominated by hundreds of scientists. And something has to be proven beyond the shadow of a doubt before a Nobel Prize is given. And we are so close to giving Nobel Prize to someone, and he's talking in the Congress, making statements against it. There is a book recently came out. I haven't read it. It's by a NASA scientist. It's called Merchants of Doubt. He calls these people merchants of doubt. Maybe a good reading. I'm not familiar with it. I just know that there's a book out there. So this is a common thing, to go look for underfunded scientists. Sometimes scientists get two years of grant to conduct research, and then the grant is taken back because of the cuts. These people are looking for jobs. And if he made $70,000 last year, if you offer him $250,000 by a tobacco company, I'll take it. Because I will never make that kind of money ever again. So how do we know that this was going on with tobacco companies and these people, their connections with tobacco companies and the big corporations? This is how it was discovered, because if you recall, there were lawsuits going on against tobacco companies since the 1950s. In 1954, one of these scientists who was testifying, he was bragging about, look, there have been 117 cases against the tobacco companies, and we have not given them a dime. None of them won the case, because you send these people to courts who give their opinions. In my opinion, I'm a scientist, tobacco does not cause cancer. Meanwhile, the Surgeon General is giving warning, the science has been established. Finally, tobacco companies start to lose cases. There's only so far you can go, fooling the public. They were fined 40 billion. You recall 40 billion, 20 billion. For them, that's a chunk change, actually, by the way. They're still alive, those companies still making a lot of money. So during those lawsuits, those of you who are familiar with the litigation, or the litigation works, first you subpoena information. That's how every lawsuit starts. And after the subpoena, you have to give out all the documentation. You ask for this, everything. They will ask for everything they can think of. And then these documents are released, internal documents, which are otherwise confidential in the tobacco company. They have to be released to the opposite party for review. And although defendants very frequently, this is how the legal system is, can hide some of that. And unless someone can prove that they hid information, they can go to jail, but it's very hard to prove. But when you have tons and tons and tons of documents, some of the documents are going to slip through when you present all this. Some clerk is going to photocopy for you. And that's how they found internal documents of these tobacco companies, which says clearly, because when it's internal memo, I'm sending to your office, we are talking to each other, we are both insiders. I'm not afraid to say something. I'm not going to say the same things to public, but I'm going to send you a memo. Our tactic is working. Our technique of creating doubt is working. We are talking to each other. So those documents were released. In 1990, there was the second issue. After they lost all their lawsuits, the second issue came over second-hand smoke. They say, okay, now we admit that the smoke caused lung cancer, but second-hand smoke, no, it doesn't. Now let's fight that for as long as we can. Let's fool the public as long as we can. But finally, when we say we can't go any further, we will go back home and stop talking about it. That's the technique. Can you imagine fooling the public for 30, 40 years, 50 years? That's a very, very high rate of success in believing that tobacco, well, it may not cause cancer, creating that doubt. And how about those people who died, who lost all their, loved ones to cancer, to lung cancer? They lost their lawsuits, they lost everything. I'm not saying that people who smoke, they don't have a responsibility. That's why there is a strong argument in favor of the freedom of conscience. You want to kill yourself? Go ahead. But we all want our freedom. That's why in Holland, sorry, I'm going off the track a little bit, they give you needles, this and that, and the drug rate, addiction is a lot less. When you forbid something, people will do more of that. That's the opposite viewpoint, almost the Republican, and that's a good viewpoint. So Dr. Singh then testified again. He said, well, the secondhand, the smoke as far as tobacco is concerned, especially the secondhand smoke, he presented some science. He said there's a Paracelsian motto. It's called Paracelsus. Was a scientist who lived in the Dark Ages. He's quoting him now. He lived in the 14th century. That there is the idea of threshold levels. In other words, every drug, anything that you take, you have to take a certain inoculation, like a certain amount before the cancer will occur. It's just like getting a flu or cold. The idea is that you have to be, someone will sneeze on you, you have to get a certain dose. That's a threshold. If you get it below that, you won't catch flu for that, or tuberculosis or anything like that. So he was presenting this science. So the funny thing about that science that he was presenting is 400 years old, in Dark Ages, actually before Copernicus. That's when the science really started, about 400 years ago. So quoting a science that's 400 years ago doesn't make any sense. The whole idea is a war between government regulation versus government taking over the lives of people. That's one of the panic nowadays. The government is putting these cameras in parking lots and bathrooms everywhere, and we are afraid that in the name of terrorism they're going to take our freedom away. Because the data technology is such that literally I can be around you, I can tell your license number, I have a little gadget, I know your name, I press it, I give me your license number, your social security number, everything. The fear is that once this information is gone to the government, then the government, you think that they're going to be able to contain that information? How many people can go on the internet and find out everything about you, how many properties you own, how much money you have in retirement? They can find out. So that's a genuine fear that Republicans have, and that is one of the reasons why I have some sympathy with people like Sykes and Singer and Jastrow, who formed the Marshall Institute, that they were, perhaps some of their behavior was very genuine. If you think about it, the last thing you want is the government regulation. I know, I sound like a big Republican now, but the fact of the matter is government is lousy, that destroys everything. It really does. You see, as a private company, if you give people the freedom and say, you know what, you have no reason to complain that you're poor, you're miserable, you're unhealthy. I'm going to give you all the tools and the freedom and the opportunity to become rich and have everything that you ever wanted. Just getting that freedom alone is the greatest idea ever in the history of mankind, which is missing from a lot of other countries where there's a lot of corruption. And if you didn't make it, you didn't make it, you are doomed for good. I can tell you that. I was born in India. I can tell you, if you didn't make it at the right time, you are done. You are done. There is no other second chance or third chance for you. So this is the freedom that we love in this country. It's a wonderful thing. But in the name of freedom, we cannot sacrifice the truth. Because if global warming is a genuine problem that's going to destroy our future, then we need to pay attention. And everybody needs to learn about it. And my original idea was to go into the specifics. I think if you guys are interested, we can have another seminar on this to go into specifically how things work and actually answering